She was just a kid in seat 17 on a doomed flight. Then F-22 fighter jets arrived to help. The military pilots guided the dying plane, professional and calm, until they heard her father's name. One word changed everything. Falcon. Suddenly that little girl wasn't just another passenger. She was family. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The Boeing 737 cruised at 35,000 feet, carrying 200 passengers from Seattle to Washington, D.C. Most people were sleeping, reading, or watching movies on their small screens. In seat 17A, by the window, sat 12-year-old Emma Rodriguez. She pressed her face against the cold glass, watching the clouds below turn orange and pink in the sunset. Emma traveled alone. A flight attendant had checked on her twice already, making sure she had everything she needed. The woman with the kind smile didn't know that Emma made this trip every month. She didn't know that the small girl with the backpack covered in airplane stickers was more comfortable in the sky than most adults. "Would you like some juice, sweetie?" the flight attendant asked, stopping by her row again. "No thank you, ma'am," Emma replied politely. "I'm okay." The flight attendant smiled and moved on. Emma returned to her window, her fingers tracing the outline of a cloud. She wore a simple t-shirt and jeans, with a silver chain around her neck. On the chain hung a small metal pin shaped like a falcon's wing. She touched it often, like a habit. Emma's father had given her that pin 3 years ago, before his last deployment. "Falcons are special birds," he had told her, kneeling down to her eye level. "They're fast, brave, and they always find their way home. Just like me. Just like you." But her father didn't come home from that deployment. Not the way he left. Captain Michael Falcon Rodriguez had been an F-22 Raptor pilot, one of the best in the Air Force. He flew missions that Emma couldn't know about, protecting people who would never know his name. On his final mission, something went wrong. The details were classified, but the result was clear: Captain Rodriguez was gone. Emma touched the pin again. She was flying to Washington, D.C. to attend a ceremony at the Air Force Memorial. They were honoring her father, finally. Her mother would meet her at the airport. They would stay in a hotel, attend the ceremony, and fly back home to Seattle. It was all planned out. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, shaking slightly. Most passengers didn't notice, but Emma felt it immediately. She had a sense for flying, inherited from her father perhaps, or developed from all her trips back and forth across the country. Then the shaking got worse. The seatbelt sign came on with a sharp ding. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some unexpected turbulence. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." Emma was already buckled in. She looked around. A few people seemed nervous, gripping their armrests. Others tried to act casual, but their eyes showed concern. The plane shook harder, dipping suddenly. A woman across the aisle gasped. Then the lights flickered. Emma's heart started beating faster, but she stayed calm. Her father had taught her about flying, about how planes worked, about what to do in emergencies. "Don't panic," he had said. "Panic doesn't solve problems. Clear thinking does." The pilot's voice returned, and this time it was different. Still professional, but urgent. "Flight attendants, prepare for emergency procedures." That's when Emma knew something was really wrong. The plane tilted to the left, harder than before. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, swinging on their tubes. People started screaming. The flight attendants moved quickly through the aisles, helping passengers with their masks, keeping their voices steady even though Emma could see the fear in their eyes. Emma pulled her oxygen mask down and held it to her face, just like the safety card showed. She watched the flight attendants, watched how they moved with purpose, how they stayed calm. She tried to do the same. The plane dropped suddenly, making her stomach flip. Someone was crying. A baby wailed somewhere in the back. Through all the noise and fear, Emma heard pieces of conversation from the flight crew. Hydraulics failure. Trying to stabilize. Need to make an emergency landing. Emma looked out her window. They were still over mountains, jagged peaks covered in snow. Not a good place to land. She knew enough about flying to understand that the pilot needed flat ground, a runway, or at least an open field. Mountains offered none of that. The lead flight attendant, a tall woman with gray hair, moved down the aisle checking on passengers. When she reached Emma, she paused. "Are you okay, honey? Do you need anything?" "I'm okay," Emma said through her mask. "What's happening?" The flight attendant hesitated. Usually, crew members didn't share technical details with passengers, especially not with children. But something about Emma's calm, focused expression made her answer honestly. "We have a problem with the plane's controls," she said quietly. "The pilots are working on it. We might need to land somewhere other than Washington." "Are we going to crash?" Emma asked. Not with fear, but with genuine curiosity, like she was asking about the weather. The flight attendant looked surprised by the calm question. "The pilots are very skilled. They're doing everything they can." Emma nodded. "My dad was a pilot. An Air Force pilot. He would know what to do." Something in Emma's voice, some combination of pride and sadness, made the flight attendant pause. She put her hand on Emma's shoulder. "I'm sure he would be very proud of how brave you're being." "Thank you, ma'am." The flight attendant moved on, and Emma returned to her window. The plane was descending now, she could feel it. They were losing altitude, dropping below the clouds. She could see the ground getting closer, the mountains looking bigger and more dangerous. In the cockpit, Captain Sarah Chen and First Officer David Park worked frantically. The hydraulic system that controlled the plane's flaps and rudder was failing. They had partial control, but it was like trying to steer a car with a broken steering wheel. Every adjustment took enormous effort, and the plane didn't always respond the way it should. Chen had been flying for 18 years. She had flown through thunderstorms, dealt with engine failures, landed in crosswinds that would make most pilots refuse to take off. But this was different. This was a nightmare scenario, the kind they trained for but hoped would never happen. She thought about her 2 kids at home, waiting for her. She thought about her husband, who would be checking the flight status, probably getting worried by now. She thought about the passengers behind her, trusting her with their lives. She couldn't let them down. "We need military assistance," Captain Chen said, her hands tight on the controls. "We're going down whether we want to or not. We need them to clear airspace and find us a landing spot." First Officer Park was already on the radio. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Atlantic Airways Flight 227. We have complete hydraulic failure and are descending. Request immediate assistance." The response came quickly from Air Traffic Control. "Flight 227, we copy your mayday. We're contacting military assets in your area. Stand by." 30 miles away, 2 F-22 Raptors were on a routine training flight. Major Alex Hawk Martinez and Captain Lisa Phoenix Thompson were practicing formation flying over the mountains when their radio crackled to life. "Hawk, Phoenix, this is Mountain Control. We have an emergency situation. Commercial aircraft in distress, losing altitude fast. We need you to intercept and provide visual assessment." Major Martinez didn't hesitate. "Mountain Control, Hawk copies. Proceeding to intercept. Send coordinates." The numbers came through, and both F-22s banked hard, their powerful engines pushing them toward the troubled airliner. Within minutes, they had visual contact. "Mountain Control, Hawk has visual on the aircraft," Martinez reported. "Boeing 737 appears to be descending rapidly. Angle is wrong. They're in trouble. Hawk, can you establish radio contact? Attempting now. Martinez switched frequencies. Atlantic Airways Flight 227, this is Air Force Major Martinez in the F-22 off your right wing. Do you copy? In the cockpit, Captain Chen nearly cried with relief when she heard the voice. Major, we copy. Thank God. We have complete hydraulic failure. Minimal control. We're going down. Captain, we're here to help, Martinez said, his voice calm and steady. What's your situation? We have 212 souls on board. We can't maintain altitude. I need a place to land, and I need it now. Martinez looked out at the terrain below. Mountains, trees, a few small towns. Nothing that looked like a suitable landing site. He thought fast. There's an old Air Force training field about 20 miles northeast. It's not maintained, but the runway is still there. Can you make it? Captain Chen checked her instruments, did quick math in her head. Maybe. If we don't lose more hydraulics. Can you guide us in? That's exactly what we're going to do, Martinez said. Phoenix and I will escort you. We'll be your eyes. You focus on keeping that bird in the air. Captain Thompson brought her F-22 alongside the airliner's left wing while Martinez stayed on the right. Together, they formed a protective formation around the struggling plane. All right, Captain, Martinez said. Start your turn to heading 045. Nice and easy. In seat 17A, Emma watched the F-22 appear outside her window. It was so close she could see the pilot's helmet, could see the details of the sleek fighter jet. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The F-22 Raptor was everything her father had described and more. She had seen pictures, watched videos, even visited air shows where they performed. But seeing one this close, in flight, holding position beside a struggling airliner, this was different. This was real. The fighter jet moved with grace and power, its wings catching the sunlight. Emma could see the missiles mounted beneath, the sharp angles of its stealth design, the way it seemed to cut through the air like a knife through water. Her father had flown jets like this. He had sat in that cockpit, made those adjustments, held that steady position beside other aircraft. She pressed her palm flat against the cold window, as if she could touch the jet through the glass. As if she could reach across the distance and touch her father one more time. Dad, she whispered. I wish you were here. But in a way, he was. Every line of that F-22, every maneuver, every moment of protective formation flying, it was all part of the world her father had lived in, the brotherhood he had belonged to. And now those brothers were here, watching over her, keeping her safe. Other passengers noticed too. People pointed, some with fear, some with hope. A teenage boy in the row behind Emma pulled out his phone to take pictures before a flight attendant gently told him to put it away. An elderly man across the aisle made the sign of the cross and murmured, "Thank God for the military." Nobody knew what the fighter jets meant. Were they here to shoot the plane down? To help? To escort them to an emergency landing? The flight attendant with the gray hair got on the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, the military aircraft you see outside are here to help us. They're going to guide us to a safe landing. Please remain calm and stay in your seats with your seatbelts fastened. Emma pressed her hand against the window, watching the F-22. She thought about her father, about all the times he must have flown beside other planes, protecting them, guiding them. She felt connected to the pilot in that fighter jet, connected through her father somehow. The plane banked slowly, turning toward the northeast. Every movement was labored, difficult. Captain Chen fought the controls, sweat dripping down her face despite the cool air in the cockpit. How's the hydraulic pressure? First Officer Park called out, monitoring the gauges. Down to 30% on primary. Secondary is at 15 and falling. Chen's voice was tight with concentration. Park's face went pale. If we lose secondary completely. We won't, Chen said firmly, though she wasn't sure she believed it. We can't. You're doing great, Captain, Martinez encouraged over the radio. Level out, good. Now maintain this heading. The field is 15 miles ahead. Chen wiped sweat from her forehead with her sleeve. Her arms ached from fighting the controls. Every adjustment felt like pushing a boulder uphill. I don't know if we'll make it, she admitted, her voice tight. We're losing pressure in the secondary system now. If that goes, I'll have almost nothing. In the cabin, passengers could feel the struggle. The plane wasn't flying smoothly anymore. It wobbled, dipped, corrected, wobbled again. Every movement felt uncertain, fragile. A man in seat 15C gripped his wife's hand. We're going to be okay, he told her, though his voice shook. A mother in row 22 held her 2 children close, one under each arm, whispering prayers. The flight attendant with gray hair walked the aisles one more time, her legs steady despite the shaking plane, her voice calm despite the fear in her heart. Stay calm, everyone. Our pilots are incredible. The military is guiding us in. We're almost there. When she passed Emma's seat, she paused again. The girl was still looking out the window, still watching the F-22, still calm. The flight attendant knelt down. How are you doing, sweetheart? I'm okay, Emma said. Then she looked at the flight attendant with eyes that seemed older than 12. Are you scared? The flight attendant hesitated, then decided honesty was best. Yes. I am. But I'm also hopeful. And I trust our pilots. Me too, Emma said. My dad always said that good pilots can do impossible things when they have to. These are good pilots. The flight attendant squeezed Emma's shoulder and moved on, wondering how a child could be so brave. Back in the cockpit, Martinez made a quick decision. He knew the protocols, knew what he was supposed to do in this situation. But he also knew that sometimes protocols weren't enough. Sometimes you needed something more. Captain, what's your name? The question surprised her. Sarah. Sarah Chen. Sarah, I'm Alex. I've been flying for 15 years, and I've seen a lot of situations. I've talked pilots through worse than this. You're going to make it. Do you believe me? There was a pause. Then, yes. Yes, I do. Good. Because there are 212 people counting on you. What kind of passengers do you have back there? First Officer Park answered this time. Families, business travelers, couple of school groups. We have an unaccompanied minor in 17A. 12 years old. Emma didn't know they were talking about her. She was too focused on the F-22, on the way it stayed perfectly positioned beside the airliner, steady and protective. Martinez felt something tighten in his chest at the mention of the child. He had kids. This hit different. What's the minor's name? The flight attendant supervisor checked her passenger list. She spoke into the intercom to the cockpit. Emma Rodriguez. She's traveling alone to Washington, D.C. Rodriguez? Martinez repeated. Something about that name, combined with the D.C. destination, stirred a memory. Does she have family in the military? Let me check. The flight attendant went back to Emma's seat. Honey, the pilots need to know, do you have family in the military? Emma looked up at the kind woman. My dad. He was an Air Force pilot. He died 3 years ago. I'm going to his memorial ceremony. The flight attendant felt her throat tighten. She relayed the information to the cockpit. When the words reached Martinez, he felt like he'd been punched. His hand tightened on the flight stick. What was her father's name? His call sign. The flight attendant asked Emma gently. Captain Michael Rodriguez, Emma said quietly. His call sign was Falcon. The flight attendant passed this on, and both F-22 pilots reacted simultaneously. "Falcon," Captain Thompson said over the radio, her voice cracking slightly. "Michael Falcon Rodriguez?" Martinez's voice was thick with emotion. "I knew him. Sarah, that little girl's father was one of the best pilots I ever flew with. He saved my life on a mission over hostile territory. I owe him everything." Martinez's mind flashed back 3 years. The mission was classified, but the memory was burned into his brain. His F-22 had taken damage from ground fire. Systems failing, ejection seat malfunctioning, enemy fighters closing in. He was a dead man. Then Falcon appeared, coming in at impossible speed, putting his own aircraft between Martinez and the enemy, giving Martinez the cover he needed to limp back to base. Falcon had taken fire doing it, damaged his own plane, but he never hesitated. "Nobody gets left behind, Hawk," Falcon had said over the radio. Nobody. 2 weeks later, Falcon was gone. Shot down over territory so hostile they couldn't even recover his body for months. Martinez had gone to the funeral, stood at attention in the rain, saluted a flag-draped casket and sworn he would never forget the man who saved his life. And now that man's daughter was on a dying plane, and Martinez had a chance to repay the debt. In the cockpit, Captain Chen didn't know what to say. Martinez continued, his voice strong now, filled with purpose. "That man's daughter is on your plane. We are not letting anything happen to her. Do you hear me, Sarah? We're getting everyone down safe." "Copy that," Chen said, and she could hear the tears in her own voice. Martinez switched to a secure channel to speak with Thompson. "Phoenix, did you know Falcon?" "I flew with him twice," Thompson replied. "Good man. Great pilot. His daughter is on that plane." "Then we make sure she gets to that ceremony," Thompson said firmly. "We owe Falcon that much." Martinez switched back to the main frequency. "Sarah, we're 10 miles out from the field. How are your controls?" "Getting worse. I'm fighting for every degree of movement." "All right. Listen carefully. I'm going to talk you through this step by step. Phoenix and I are going to stay with you all the way to the ground. You're not doing this alone." Emma watched the F-22 through her window. She didn't know the pilots were talking about her father. She just knew that the fighter jet was still there, steady and strong, like a guardian angel with afterburners. The old Air Force training field came into view. It was rough, overgrown in places, but the runway was visible, a long strip of cracked concrete cutting through the wilderness. "I see it," Chen said, her voice barely above a whisper. Martinez looked at the field, calculating angles and distances in his head the way every pilot learns to do. The runway was 7,000 feet long, which should be enough for a 737. Should be. But with limited hydraulics, no flaps, and high speed, it was going to be tight. Very tight. Good. Now, you're coming in fast and you're going to have trouble slowing down with limited controls. That runway is 7,000 feet. You'll use every inch of it, but it's enough. Park checked the instruments. Speed is 190 and we can't slow down much more without losing control. We're coming in hot, Chen said. Way too hot. I know, Martinez replied calmly. But you've got this, Sarah. Line up with the runway. Trust your training. Trust yourself. I can't deploy flaps properly. I can't. Yes, you can, Martinez interrupted, his voice like steel. You're going to do this, Sarah. Line up with that runway. Adjust your descent rate. Nice and easy. The airliner wobbled as Chen fought to align with the runway. Passengers gripped their seats, some praying, some crying, some just frozen in fear. Emma stayed calm. She touched her father's pin and whispered, "Help them, Dad. Please help them. You're too steep," Martinez called out. Pull up just a bit. There you go. Good. Keep that angle. The ground rushed up to meet them. The runway filled the windscreen. Steady, steady. Martinez coached. Wait for it, wait for it. The wheels hit the concrete with a jarring thump that shook the entire aircraft. Chen immediately reversed the engines, using everything she had left to slow the plane. The runway blurred past. Metal screamed. The plane shook violently. Brakes, Sarah. Everything you've got. Chen stood on the brake pedals, her legs shaking with effort. The plane slowed, but not fast enough. They were running out of runway. 4,000 feet left. 3,000. 2,000. Emma braced herself, her hands pressed against the seat in front of her. 1,000 feet. The plane was slowing, finally slowing. 500 feet from the end of the runway, the Boeing 737 came to a complete stop. For a moment, there was absolute silence inside the aircraft. Then someone started clapping. Then another person. Then everyone, erupting in cheers and applause and tears of relief. Captain Chen sat back in her seat, her hands shaking. First Officer Park was crying openly. They had done it. Sarah, Martinez's voice came through the radio. Beautiful job. You got them all down safe. Thank you, was all Chen could say. Thank you. Emergency vehicles that had been scrambled to the site surrounded the plane. Fire trucks, ambulances, all ready to help if needed. The passengers evacuated quickly but calmly using the emergency slides. No one was seriously injured. It was a miracle. Emma slid down the emergency chute, helped by a firefighter at the bottom. She stood on solid ground, her legs shaky, her heart still pounding. She looked up at the sky and saw the two F-22s circling overhead, watching over them even now. Major Martinez had one more thing to do. He brought his F-22 low, doing a slow pass over the evacuated passengers. Then he did something unusual, something not in any manual. He waggled his wings, the universal pilot gesture of respect and farewell. Emma saw it. She understood what it meant. She waved at the fighter jet, tears streaming down her face. Martinez saw the small figure waving and felt his own eyes get wet. Take care, Falcon's daughter, he whispered. An hour later, after all the passengers had been checked by medics and the investigation was beginning, a military jeep pulled up to the area where passengers were gathering. Major Martinez and Captain Thompson stepped out, still in their flight suits. They walked through the crowd, asking questions until they found Emma sitting on a blanket with a medical crew, drinking water and eating a granola bar. Martinez knelt down beside her. Emma Rodriguez? She looked up at him, at the major's insignia on his flight suit, at the Raptor patch on his shoulder. Yes, sir. I'm Major Alex Martinez. This is Captain Lisa Thompson. We flew the F-22s that escorted your plane. Emma's eyes widened. That was you? Yes, ma'am. Martinez smiled. We heard your name. We heard about your father. Emma's hand went to the pin around her neck. You knew him? I did. Falcon Rodriguez was one of the finest pilots I ever served with. He saved my life on a mission 3 years ago. I never got to thank him. Tears filled Emma's eyes again. He was the best dad. I believe it, Martinez said gently. And I want you to know something, Emma. When we heard his name up there, when we knew his daughter was on that plane, there was no way we were letting anything happen to you. We owe your father that and so much more. Thompson knelt down too. Your dad used to tell stories about you. He carried your picture in his cockpit. He was so proud of you. He did? Emma asked, surprised. Every mission. Every flight. He said you were his lucky charm, his reason for coming home. Thompson's voice was soft. I'm sorry he didn't make it home the last time. Me too, Emma whispered. Thompson sat down on the blanket beside Emma. Can I tell you something your dad said once? We were on a long flight, escorting cargo planes over the Pacific. It was boring, hours of just flying straight. Falcon started talking about you. He said you were smarter than him, braver than him, and that one day you might even be a better pilot than him. Emma's eyes widened. He said that? He did. I asked him if you wanted to fly, and he said you loved airplanes but you were still figuring out what you wanted to be. He said whatever you chose, you'd be amazing at it because you had his determination and your mother's heart. A tear rolled down Emma's cheek. I miss him so much. I know, sweetheart, Thompson said, putting an arm around her shoulders. But he's still with you. Every time you're brave, every time you stay calm when others panic, every time you help someone, that's him. That's Falcon's legacy living on in you. Martinez reached into his flight suit pocket and pulled out a patch, the official F-22 Raptor patch from his uniform. He handed it to Emma. I want you to have this. And I want you to know that every time I fly, I'm going to think of your dad, and I'm going to think of how proud he would be of how brave you were today. Emma took the patch with trembling hands. Thank you. No, Martinez said, standing up. Thank you. And thank your father for us. He was a hero. Still is. As the sun set behind the mountains, Emma sat on that blanket, holding the F-22 patch in one hand and her father's pin in the other. She had started the day as just a kid in seat 17A, another unaccompanied minor on another routine flight. But then the F-22 pilots heard the name Falcon, and everything changed. She wasn't just a kid anymore. She was the daughter of a hero, protected by the men and women her father had served with, carried safely to the ground by the brotherhood of pilots who never forget their own. 2 days later, Emma stood at the Air Force Memorial in Washington, D.C., her mother beside her. The ceremony honored her father and other fallen pilots. Major Martinez and Captain Thompson were there too, in their dress uniforms, standing at attention. When Emma's name was called to receive her father's posthumous medal, she walked forward with her head high. Her mother squeezed her hand before letting go. Emma could feel hundreds of eyes on her, but she wasn't nervous. She thought about seat 17A, about the feeling of the plane shaking, about the F-22 appearing outside her window like an answer to a prayer. She accepted the medal from the general, a man with silver hair and kind eyes who had flown with her father years ago. The general leaned down and whispered, "Your father was the bravest man I knew. You have his courage, young lady." Emma saluted, a salute her father had taught her when she was little, practicing in their backyard while he laughed and corrected her form. The general returned the salute with pride. She turned to face the crowd, stepping up to the microphone. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice didn't. My dad always said that flying was freedom, she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. He said that when you're up in the sky, you're not just flying a plane. You're carrying hopes and dreams, protecting people who will never know your name, doing something bigger than yourself. She looked at Martinez and Thompson in the crowd. A few days ago, I learned what he meant. I learned that pilots take care of each other, that they honor their promises, and that even when someone is gone, they're never forgotten. Emma held up the medal, the F-22 patch Martinez had given her, and her father's Falcon pin. My dad was called Falcon because he was fast and brave and he always found his way home. He's home now. And I know that wherever he is, he's still flying, still protecting us, still proud to be a pilot. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Martinez and Thompson saluted, tears on their faces. That night, as Emma and her mother flew back to Seattle, on a different airline, in different seats, Emma looked out the window at the stars and thought about her father. She thought about the F-22 pilots who had saved her life because they loved him. She thought about the brotherhood of the sky, the bond between pilots that transcended death itself. She was just a kid in seat 17A. Until the F-22 pilots heard the name Falcon. And then she became part of something bigger, something eternal, the family of those who serve, who sacrifice, who never leave anyone behind. Emma touched her father's pin one more time and smiled. "I love you, Dad," she whispered to the stars. "Thank you for always watching over me." And somewhere in the vast sky above, in the realm where heroes fly forever, Captain Michael Falcon Rodriguez smiled back at his brave daughter and whispered words only the wind could carry. "Always, sweetheart. Always." 6 years later, Emma Rodriguez stood on the tarmac at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. She was 18 now, wearing the uniform of a cadet, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. The silver Falcon pin still hung around her neck, tucked beneath her uniform shirt, close to her heart. She had just completed her first solo flight in a T-6 Texan trainer aircraft. Her instructor, a veteran pilot with 20 years of experience, had watched from the ground as Emma executed perfect takeoffs, turns, and landing patterns. "Rodriguez," the instructor called out as Emma climbed down from the cockpit. "That was textbook flying. Your father would be proud." Emma smiled. She heard that a lot at the academy. Everyone knew who Captain Michael Falcon Rodriguez was. His story was taught in classes. His tactics were studied. His sacrifice was honored. But Emma didn't fly because of her father's legacy. She flew because, like him, she had found freedom in the sky. She flew because on that terrible day in Seat 17A, she had learned what it meant when pilots took care of each other. She flew because Major Martinez and Captain Thompson had shown her that service meant something bigger than yourself. Her phone buzzed. A text message from Martinez, who had become like an uncle to her over the years. "Heard about your solo flight. Falcon is smiling up there. So am I, proud of you, kid." She texted back, "Thanks, Uncle Alex. See you at graduation." Emma looked up at the sky, at the clouds drifting past, at a pair of F-22s practicing maneuvers in the distance. One day, she would fly one of those. One day, she would be the pilot staying beside a troubled aircraft, guiding them to safety, never leaving anyone behind. She touched the Falcon pin through her uniform and whispered the same words she had whispered 1,000 times since that day. "I love you, Dad. Thank you for always watching over me." The wind picked up, warm and gentle, like an embrace from above. Emma Rodriguez was no longer just a kid in Seat 17A. She was a pilot. A protector. A guardian of the sky. She was her father's daughter. And she was ready to fly.